Boil them cabbage down. Good afternoon, y'all. I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama. Got some news. My memoir is going to be coming out here in the next few months. It's called The Mad Redneck. It's about my life. I'm going to work back to work at an auto shop. I'm out of academia and activism. Activism's kind of still a hobby, but it's not my main focus anymore. In March, the podcast When the World is on Fire will be coming back out, and we should have some international scholars to talk to about different stuff like the Yellow Vest movement and democracy across the globe. So there's some cool stuff happening in my life. Things are changing. Things are really changing, and yeah, I'm gonna go back to being an auto mechanic, which is where it all began. Today I want to talk about outside agitators, and outside agitators is something that Bull Connor used to call people who came to Birmingham to help with the civil rights movement. And you know, Bull Connor was notorious for saying that even somebody from Fairfield was an outside agitator, so he wanted nobody but people from Birmingham. I'm generally in favor of outside agitators, but I've seen many of these folks come to Alabama and fail miserably. And you know, I think there's a couple of little steps that need to be taken in order for an outside agitator who genuinely good people, genuinely have good ideas, but don't understand the culture and the politics of the state of Alabama. And the first thing that an outside agitator needs to do is make a commitment. And nobody in Alabama expects you to be perfect. Nobody in Alabama expects you to know everything or understand everything. But the first thing you need to do is make a long-term commitment to the people of this state, because the people of this state have been shit on and have been oppressed for many, many generations, black and white alike. And we've been manipulated by our own leaders, and we've been manipulated by outside leaders. And we don't trust very many people, and we especially don't trust very many outsiders. So you have to prove yourself. And when I got to Birmingham, I'm from Birmingham, okay? And when I got to Birmingham, I made a long-term commitment to that community, and I stayed there for 9 years. I worked with a faith-based organization, not like me politically, didn't have the same politics, didn't have the same approach to things, but I worked with them and established trust with them for 5 years before our organization, Magic City Agriculture Project, did anything publicly. So we learned what was going on in the community. We learned what was happening. I actually, as part of that project, I did things ranging from teaching GED classes to picking okra at the local urban farm. And now that place has an urban farm, and they're funded, and they have paid interns who run the farm during the summertime. It's really a good thing that we help them do. But before stepping out and saying we know what to do, we spent years in building trust, and we made mistakes, and we apologized for those mistakes, and we said that we wouldn't make those mistakes again. And I think that, you know, people respond well to that here. People don't expect you to be perfect, and I think that's, you know, what sometimes outside agitators come in and they think that people expect you to be perfect. No, we just expect you to be real and to make a commitment to our people. The second thing is, don't come in with a bunch of grand ideas, because as good as those ideas sound, it's really difficult to make them work. The margin of error and the window for success in Alabama and Birmingham is very, very small. And some little tiny victories can be significant. You know, and I look at what we did in Birmingham. We've made some great strides in Birmingham. There's a There's more than one cooperative organization in Birmingham. We changed the nature of the debate on development in the city, and we even almost got institutional legitimacy. And we had a window there, and we thought we had won, and we turned out we didn't. And even though failure is common for progressive activists in Alabama, it's just part of it. I mean, it's common for progressive activists everywhere, but it's really common for progressive activists in Alabama. And just be prepared that the grand ideas that you have may not pan out in the way that you think they do, but you may develop great friendships and great relationships with people, and you may go through the fire together, and you may learn something about yourself that you didn't know, and that's all valuable. And the last thing is ask people if they want to be organized. Just because a group is oppressed, just because a group has difficult work condition, does not mean that they necessarily want to be organized. And yes, organizing is a great thing. I think it's a perfect thing. I think it's great, but you got to ask people if they want it, because anytime these groups or individuals from these oppressed groups step out, they put themselves at risk. And you have to understand, there's not protections for people in the state of Alabama. It's a right to work state, and if you step out, you're liable to get crushed. And many of us were crushed in Alabama, and many of us couldn't get jobs after. And there's just a great deal of risk. And we have some great successes here. Lily Ledbetter, the civil rights movement, Fred Shuttlesworth, ACMHR, and King, and all of them. We have some great successes here, but it's a really hard place to work. And just recognize the risk that you're putting people in when you ask them to stand up. And make sure that it's not about getting a notch on your belt and saying, I won in Alabama, to all of your national and international friends, and make sure it's really about the people of our state. And that's really the crux of it. The crux of it is, it needs to be about the people of our state, and not about your organization, about your power, about your ideas. It needs to be about the people of Alabama, the people of Birmingham. And as long as it's about that, and you have a genuine love for us, you love our culture, you love our food, you love our music, like, I'm for it. But if it's about putting another notch on your belt, another victory in the win column for you that you can use to leverage more money for your organization, I'm not for it. And I think you should just pass this on by, go on down the road, find somebody else to organize. And I'm not about that. And at last, I'll say that the Outside Agitators, who are my friends and who I think have done it the right way, is the people at Sand Mountain Cooperative Education. And they have come in, they have listened, they have seen what our strengths are, and and instead of coming in and seeing how we're weak or failing or inadequate, they've come in and they've seen what our strengths are, and they've tried to build off of those strengths, and they've listened. And I have to give them a lot of credit, Daniel Marshall and others. I have to give them a lot of credit for the way that they've come into our community and really been about our community and not about some other agenda. I'm Zach Henson, Montgomery, Alabama, February, and it's a hot day for February. It's like 80. February 2019. Peace, y'all.